something else, a word that it's amazing that we haven't had to learn yet, which is the forms of the verb to be. The only one that we have had, do you remember this, is the third person singular and the third person plural of the verb to be. I think we learned he, she, and it is, and they are. I think so, but I haven't used them for a long time. At the beginning we had sentences with them. But anyhow, let's talk about these words. So the reason that we're getting them in this lesson is that some of the forms of the verb to be, a verb that means I am, you are, he is, and so forth, are enclitic, and some are not. So we're being introduced to the concept of enclitics here, and we're going to get the forms. So let's look at the present indicative of the verb to be. And the other reason is that it's an athematic verb, right? And we just had athematic verbs, ditto, histe, me, antitheme. So this is among the oldest words in the language. So you know how bad it is in English, okay? So the inflection of the verb to be is tricky in Greek, but the root is es, okay? If you keep this in mind, it might be helpful, okay? The root is es, and that e can turn into an o, okay? So you can have forms with os, or you can have forms in which you just have an s, okay? Because you can have e or o vowel or no vowel, all right? And s is an unstable sound in Greek, so sometimes there's nothing left, okay? We can start by showing you what the subjunctive of the verb to be is, okay? Why don't we do that? So that's kind of fun. You see what happens. The subjunctive is the endings of the subjunctive. O, with a smooth breathing.
Oh, yeah.
O, es, with an eta and iota subscript. A.
Sorry.
Yep.
It's very fat, sorry.
And a. Okay. And then omen. Eta. Circumflex.
Language.
Yeah. Omen. Eta. Circumflex. And osi. Right?
Yeah.
So effectively what you have there is the endings of a verb, but no root.
Right.
Okay? Some languages hate things like that. My favorite example of that is in French. There's a rule about verbs that like décevoir, when you have a stem like EVOIR in the last principal part, in the past and the perfect part. So the form is déçu. You lose the whole avoir and you get a U.
Jeez.
So there's a verb to have in French is avoir. So the perfect of it is just the letter U.
Jeez.
Well, so they didn't like that, so they put an E in front of it. So the part you have to learn is EU instead of U. But Greek doesn't abhor the vacuum, it just leaves the O. So here's another form of the verb to be. That's the subjunctive, the present subjunctive of the verb to be. There is no aorist of the verb to be. As you remember, when we were talking about gignomai, we talked about how it functions as the aorist of the verb to be. In fact, it's aorist. So here's another cool one, the present participle of the verb to be, which is own, usa, on with a circumflex.
It's a circumflex?
Yep, owned, usa, with a circumflex. Yep, on, and then ontos. Okay.
Yep.
Again, this is just the ending of participles, uses and ontos and so forth. I think the rest of them you could predict from there, right? So again, you have a form that has no stem whatsoever. It just consists of endings, right? And you remember that, that's all right. It's because the actual ending in the participle Indo-European was an S, and the S just became an H and disappeared in this case. All right, so there are forms, however, of the present and the imperfect, okay, and the optative and the imperative, in which you have the ES stem or something like it. And if we look at the present indicative, here are the forms. Maybe you can do a new page. The forms that are attested are a me, okay, and I would put an accent on the last syllable there, but that's an enclitic form, okay? Any verb that's not accented with recessive accent, you know that something's messed up, okay? So that's just to tell you that it's enclitic. Then the second person singular is a with a circumflex, so it is not enclitic, all right? And then the third person singular is enclitic again, it's esti, okay? with a possible new movable. Okay, and then let's put down the plural, which is S-men.
This is enclitic, right?
Yep. S-te, another enclitic. And A-se, also enclitic. So effectively, you only have one form. The second person singular seems to be missing. Is there a circumflex there? Yeah, I mean, a smooth breathing in A. I just can't see it. Yeah,
sorry,
it's hard to see.
This thing is like...
Okay, there it is. Good.
It's really fat, and I can't make little things.
Okay, so what's going on with these forms with EI, like A-me and A-se, is that originally you have ESMI. Okay, the S disappears, and you lengthen the E to an EI. And the same in A-se, it's S-nse, and the N disappears, so you get an EI. And the others, the S stays in S-men and S-te and S-te, right? So you can really see there's a consistency to it. And EI, there's something else going on, but let's not worry about it. But I think these forms have a certain amount of consistency to them. They're athematic, as you can see. You've got a stem S and an ending me, te, and nse, okay, and te, and so forth, and ne. But I think you need to memorize them. Okay, and let's look at the imperfect as long as we're looking at the present. These forms are very common in real Greek. So the first person singular is either an with a circumflex accent or a, right? The more
sorry.
Yeah, it's either one. Either it's fine. Then aestha, okay, this is a totally weird active form, active second person singular ending. That's the ending that we have archaically in a few random words, okay? So that's weird. And then the third person singular is always ein, never a, okay? So you can confuse the first person singular and the third person singular of this imperfect. So what's happened is the en has been augmented, right? And so that's why you've got an eta. At least there's that, okay? And you can see the S at least is something is that remains of it in aestha anyhow. All right, the plural, it's men, like amen, with a circumflex, te, and san. There's our san ending for athematic verbs, okay? So, you know, it's not altogether mysterious, okay? There's a consistency and a systematic quality to it that's better than the English ones, okay? But you really need to learn these words and to memorize them. So we'll have a little quiz, okay?
Okay.
When you come back from Thanksgiving vacation. How's that?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Because you can't read Greek unless you know them, and you want to get really familiar with them and own them. So the present infinitive, and there isn't an aorist infinitive, is anai. It's from E-S-N-A-I. So again, the S is just appearing in this case, and you get the E-I. Present infinitive. The optative, we need a new page for this, is a-yain, a-yas, a-a in the singular. We've been at this for 20 minutes. We may need to chop this up. A-n, a-as, a-a. Amen, a-ta, a-n. A-amen or amen. Yeah, you can have either one.
Yeah.
A-a-ta and a-a-san. You're right. You did it right. And then put
Or
next to them or
amen.
amen with a circumflex. A-ta. Yep. No way, eta, just the iota. And a-n, E-I-E-N. Right? Again, those forms look like there's no root, but the only root that's left is the epsilon. You have the epsilon for all of these, and then an iota. Or an iota, and the optative endings, right? So this isn't so bad either. So let's remember that the subjunctive, the participle, and even the optative are just basically forms with an ending, and in the case of the optative, you have a root that's just an E. And the others, the ending, what complicates them, makes them more difficult, is that the stem ES survived to some extent and underwent some stem changes. Mainly, the S disappeared, and you get an EI for it. Okay, so that's why you're going to see EI forms. All right.